and how to manage them as a collective group. And so I think that is the first part of this proposal, is getting the test net set up and going about it. So.
Okay, well, if you could just do, I mean, that may have been the update right there, but let's just wait till when people come on. If you could just kind of walk people through all that, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool, thank you.
I've got the
okay.
as well, so I can show that and the progress that has been going on in transparency, if you'd like me to.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that, Rex. You said are you talking about the spreadsheet?
The aggregated working group spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a little bit of time today too, so that would be good. How about we reserve that to the end, and if we don't get to that today, then we add it to next week.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so welcome Crypto Zach, NT Bear, and Tam. And a special shout out to those of you who are in Europe. I realize this is super late. And I just mentioned this to Tam today, but I don't know, we may want to look, Bear, we may want to look at opening up this question of the timing of this meeting, because it's really not right for people who are in Europe to have to do it this late. But we'll talk about that afterwards. Okay, so all right, let me just let's dive in. Why don't we start off with somebody reading the Sampo mission. So let's let's see. Tam, would you do us the honor?
Yeah, with pleasure. So the Sampo mission. The Sampo Working Group develops and grows the value of the economic layer of the token engineering commons. It aligns this microeconomy with the TEC mission and the collective success and individual benefit of its token holders.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump in with a check-in, and I just as a reminder, I always say this, but there's a text channel on the right, and that's been great in the past to just kind of like, keep questions coming along and stuff like that without having to interrupt the person who's speaking. So let's start off with the following check-in. What do you think are our most important first steps to economic sustainability? And so what I mean by that is like, where should we be focused right now? And let's see. I'm going to ask, well, who would like to go first? Just because I think it's always hard to go first. So if somebody is ready to go first, let's just start there. Okay, I'm gonna have to. Gene, thank you.
Sir, I think we should be offering services and diversifying that portfolio as soon as possible. That's be earning right now as fast as possible. First step.
Cool, thank you. Do you want to pass it to somebody?
Pass to Nate.
Yeah, I think the first steps are to find a simple utility that we can use with the TEC token and integrate the augmented bonding curve in that process somehow. Even if it's simply as saying, if you want to join this channel of the Discord, show me a transaction from the augmented bonding curve or something. It's one of these things where we need to really start to integrate this into the process of creating utility. So I think just having a simple version of utility with the token will be huge, and just giving people the option to use their token. So I'll pass it over to Rex.
Sorry, who did you pass to?
Rex.
Okay. I think that we should try and start growing revenue streams in those projects that have the quickest potential to do so. So, say, gatekeeping the Token Engineering Academy for second edition courses and so on, and trying to get a higher number of working groups and projects towards a sustainable state, rather than look at it from solely a macro state. Yeah, I'll pass it to Gideon, I guess. I don't know who's missing. Or Gene, have you spoken yet?
I did. Thank you, sir.
I can take it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Good answers, interesting answers. So for maybe, if I just imagine this is me instead of this is the TEC, like if this was my family and this is all on my shoulders to do, I feel like the first thing is putting capital to work. So taking the capital we have and having that work for us would be the first step. But in parallel to that, building valuable something, right? Whether it's services or token utility, I would. I mean, it's like I would try to do these things in parallel, so that there's some like immediate gain, but then some sort of future growth as well. And I'll pass to Guyan. I'm not sure if you were here for the question though.
Wasn't. I just arrived.
I'll give you the question, and also, welcome to Guyan and welcome Crypto Queen. Nice to have you both here. The question is, and this may be tough because, I mean, I think that Crypto Queen, I know you are relatively new. I remember seeing you last week, I think, the first time on our community call. But here's the question. What do you think are our most important first steps to economic sustainability as a community?
Oh man. First steps. Okay. Yeah, I mean, money coming in. I'm not sure the best place to have that happen in terms of yeah, like my understanding of the existing token engineers that are involved in the community and their clientele and how that might parlay to clients for token engineering commons. Like, I don't really know that, but to me, that's sort of the obvious thing, is to, work with existing token engineers and have it be, a way that you can have a larger cross section of people involved with that, which I know very much ties into the token engineering fundamentals course in terms of getting more people up to speed to actually have that skill set. But to me, that seems sort of like the obvious, quote unquote, obvious answer. And it seems like it's already underway. So I'll pass to, you said Crypto Queen hasn't spoken yet? I don't see that person.
I think she just jumped off. But we can pass. Do you want me to pass for you since you just got on?
Yeah, please.
So welcome, Shaheen. And I'm going to pass to Crypto Zach.
Hey, y'all. I agree with what Guyan just said. I think that the most important first step towards obtaining sustainability is getting more token engineers involved with this project, whether it be getting currently existing token engineers to commit some of their time towards helping projects who will pay revenue or pay money for the time of token engineers for consulting their project, or maybe even creating more educational resources, or maybe if this is token engineering academy, resources good enough, incentivizing more of our TEC members to go through that academy so that they become decent at token engineering themselves. But the purpose of this DAO is to provide good token engineering services. So I think focusing our time and effort and resources on building up the most token engineering resources and expertise possible is probably the best first step towards making this DAO sustainable.
Cool. Do you want to pass it to somebody? Bear hasn't gone, Antti hasn't gone, and Shaheen, welcome. Let me just do a quick intro for Shaheen. Shaheen, you, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And this is the Sampo working group. So our focus is basically the economic layer of Sampo. So income generation, token utility, treasury management, that kind of stuff. So welcome. And the question that we're asking right now is, what do you think is the most important first step that the TEC can take to economic sustainability? And so, CryptoZack, do you want to pass to somebody?
Yeah, I'll pass it to Bear.
Yeah, thank you, CryptoZack. So for me, I think there are three really important things that I would put like maybe in the same level. One would be spending, like really focusing on how are we spending our resources. Maybe even cutting some spending, budgeting, because I feel first we need to survive in order to think more about the long term. So that would be one, and the other one would be getting funds. Getting funds somehow, either by grants, either by funding rounds. Like getting creative on that. And then once you have, I think, these two parts, we can start thinking more on the longer term with services and projects that provide token utility and this kind of stuff, because I feel those are going to take more time. So first, I think we need to get through these difficult moments and at the same time, start developing everything else. So I think that would be it. I'll pass it to Antti.
Thanks. Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything everyone has been saying. I think we are kind of in the same page. But being more specific, I have to agree a lot with Bear. I think, first of all, being able to survive, but also, I don't know if you remember, Gideon, the report I sent you from the Ethereum Foundation where they have like domain specific allocators, and I think we are in the capability of doing something like that. Like we have already provided funding for some projects, say CatCat or NumFocus, and doesn't seem like you require like a lot of expertise. Whereas, for example, for the services, you have to bring together a group of token engineers, which may not be as easy. And yeah, so I think that's one great way to one great way to look at it and a possible route. And back to you, Gideon.
Okay, thanks, Antti. And Shaheen, would you like to either answer the question or maybe just introduce yourself real quick?
Hi everyone. I would just like to start with the introductions. My name is Shaheen. I'm from Bangladesh, and yeah, currently I'm living in China. And I'm from Bright Heady team, so just exploring the things out. You might heard about Bright Heady, and yeah, so I'm just exploring things out. Nice to meet you all.
Cool. Thanks for coming. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you too. So I'll go. I think for me, I feel like I think curbing our spending is super important because when in the beginning, it's much easier to cut spending than to boost revenues. Um, and I don't mean randomly cutting spending. I just mean like being very focused on what we're investing in and cutting the rest. That doesn't really serve the essence of what we're trying to do. And then I would say actually really focusing on defining some services and getting those going as quickly as possible, even if they're very minimalist. Because I think that what that does is it starts to illustrate to people where we're headed. Actions speak way louder than words, and so if we can start to show some traction, it's like, oh, I see where these guys are going. Then that all of a sudden becomes much more attractive to potential funders. And actually, NT, I think I haven't forgotten this. What you had mentioned about the Ethereum Foundation. That basically for everybody, what that is basically a re-grantor role. So like, I could easily see the TEC playing a role of a re-grantor that is focused on token engineering. Ethereum Foundation, like if we did the right pitch, I could see in a while from now being able to say to the Ethereum Foundation, hey, you know what? Let's make sure that we don't have any more of these disastrous projects going forward. Like, let's get good token engineering practices out there, and the Token Engineering Commons, Token Engineering Academy are the best way to do that. So, like, start sending us some large chunks of money to re-grant, and we can use our community as like basically wisdom of the crowds to make sure that it gets in the right places. So I think there's huge potential there down the road. I don't think we're quite ready for that quite yet, though. Okay, thank you, everybody. That's great. So let's turn to updates right now. Just very briefly, the message to token holders has been posted up on the forum, and it's now gone out to pretty much all of the hatchers, and it's gotten some good feedback on the forum, a lot of likes and a lot of views at this point. So I think that part's done. Let's hand it over. Nate, can you give us an update on the Treasury conversations we had last week?
Yeah. So in terms of fund management, we had a really great conversation last week, and we came up with several different ideas ranging from let's not do anything at all to let's crowdsource public funds to actually use as investment and deal out capital that way. So we have this broad spectrum of the decision space that what we can and cannot do. But the reality of our situation is that we wanted to look into the mechanics of how we would do it if we were to take funds from the common pool and put them into an aggressive investment strategy and or put it into other assets. We can accomplish this from a multi-sig perspective. One of the issues with that we can do from multi-sig with Gnosis, but the interaction between these DeFi protocols, if you were to look at Balancer, for example, it's very limited in the management you can have from a multi-sig perspective, and so they're still developing the front end for that to really enable multi-sig to manage all aspects and features of a DeFi protocol, and so it would require individuals to be managing it, and this is a really hard thing to do from our perspective, because this would require trust. It would also require some type of systematic process where we can say, here are punishments, here are slashing staking mechanism would be really nice to have, which we just don't have at the moment. And the last thing is that we don't have the process down, and so we ended up agreeing on was that we would take it slow. We would start with the test net and move on to learning how to manage it from a multi-sig perspective. And so this would require less advanced strategies, investment strategies, less aggressive, but still, putting it into LP pools, getting a steady percentage, and then building on that from there as time moves forward and as we start to build trust. So that's kind of the update where we're at right now. But yeah, and then our first priority will be to develop a proposal.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Okay, so I'm now going to turn it over to Bear for the first part to talk about. Over the last week and a half, 2 weeks really, Bear and I, and then more recently, Enti, have gotten involved in basically just how we organize ourselves as a working group. And so one of the things that we're being very clear about is the roles. What are the roles that we're playing? The people who are getting an ongoing salary, like what are the expectations? And so the first one we wanted to start with is Bear's role as organizer, and then I'm going next with the steward. So Bear, do you want to talk a little bit about the organizer role?
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. I will only ask if you could just share in your screen maybe the document for the role, if that could be possible. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, just like Gideon said, we've been trying to bring some more structure to the roles and trying to figure out the way we're gonna work and we're gonna organize ourselves. And roles are a really important part of that. I think defining what a role is sometimes can be tricky and have different like meanings for people. So trying to come to an agreement, at least for this group, on what does an actual role mean, you know. So this is kind of like a first draft of kind of like a proposal of yes, the organizer role specifically, but also kind of like the structure of how roles could be defined. So I'm basing this in really interesting information that Gideon shared with me about holacracy. And something that I really liked about it is that they talk here about roles. They explain them in a really simple way, and they frame it starting with this purpose. You know, like what's the purpose of this role? No, and because I think it's also important if we talk like in the context of DAOs and the TC, that roles need to be really dynamic and they need to be really open and really clear for any person to be able to plug into that role and actually execute the different tasks attached to that role. You know, like this role is not for me, like for Bear, you know, this role is for the organizer, whoever that person is now or in the future. So having that in mind, I think having a purpose is really important as a first step of getting clarity. And then we talk a little bit about domains, what this mean. And I think the easiest example to explain it is just like if we think, for example, of a role of a web designer, you can think that its domain is the website that he's working on. You know, that's like kind of its property or its boundaries. That's where he develops and where he works his role on. So that's kind of the idea with this concept of domains. That for this organized role, let's say we could say that it's the Clarity Sampo base, you know, using the platform and also like the Discord channels to organize and to maintain. Well, I think I didn't read the purpose, but it's like to maintain, promote, and take care of the established best practices for the working group. You know, that's just like an initial idea. Maybe that will evolve and change eventually, right? But that's kind of the first idea. And then it's just like a description of the different accountabilities this role will be having. I don't know if it would be a good idea just to read them, or maybe just like the main sections that this talks about. This kind of like project management processes in the working group. You know, like knowing the different processes that happen in regards to payments, in regards to creating milestones and working on projects, assigning deadlines, um, contributions, different types of compensations, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then we also have like a section for people. This part we are working more. The accountability would be kind of working on the people plan, that it's kind of like a document that we have in mind for Sampo, where it's more focused into the development of the different members of the group, and you are actually assisting the members and contributors of the group with, for example, onboarding. That's another thing to the working group, and some other things. And then we also have like these accounting and accountability sections, where I think those are two that I would like to get some more time working on those. But basically, for accounting is tracking like the spending and of the working group, making sure that we are delivering everything that we proposed on the proposal. Finding a way to track goals and being able to get metrics on the different progress that we're having, all this kind of stuff. And lastly, another section of meeting management. So it's just like the way we coordinate during the calls, like taking notes, planning calendars, creating events, and also I think something important, promoting this part of asynchronous work within the team so we can always keep moving forward. And yeah, that's basically as far as we've got there. I think it would be really interesting if we could get like any feedback or any ideas, what you guys think. I think it's really interesting that we can actually collaborate in creating this role, like co-creation of roles. That's, I think, a really interesting concept. So yeah, I think I would leave it there, Gideon, and I just give it back to you, or if anyone else wanna say anything, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, let's make space if people have thoughts. Hey, Chewy, welcome. Any thoughts on this? We may actually want to bring this over into Clarity so that it's here in the base too at some point. But any thoughts that people have on this? Okay.
How is the best way? Sorry.
Yeah.
How is the best way for me to open that doc? I mean, it seemed super impressive to just eyeballing it the way I did just now. It looked really well thought out and thorough. Should I find it in the agenda? Where's?
Yeah, I can link it into the agenda. Actually, well, it was just like a first draft. I've been working this like a couple of days, so I haven't shared it with much people yet. But I'll definitely just put it on the agenda so everyone can have access to it. And eventually, yes, of course, I think it will be on Clarity. It's just like personally, for now, I'd find it easier to work on the Google Doc.
Cool. Thank you. So you're putting that link in there right now?
Yeah. Just give me a second.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Or what, I can do it since you're going to this next section. I can put it. Let me do that. Then you can keep going. Oh yeah, Tam. The agenda is, if you go into let's do this for everybody, because this is a question that people have asked in the past, and I think it's just good for everybody to know. So the agenda is always, if you come in, so Clarity did a big version 2, like a big upgrade like 2 weeks ago. And so this tab right here, if you see, am I sharing I'm still sharing, right? So this is kind of the TEC Sampo home. You see the home thing there? Just go there, and all of our main documents are always right here. And so the first one you're going to see is sample meetings, and that's the agenda. That's the way you can always get to our agenda. It's always up to date. Are you seeing it, Tam?
I don't see that group.
Are you? And you're in the Sampo base?
I'm not sure where the sample base is.
Okay. So, see, these things change. So let's just for everybody. I'm glad you're asking. Thank you for asking. So up at the top now. So for people who used Clarity before, this was like a big change. So up at the top says My Bases, and you can then go down and you select the base. And so, like in this case, it would be TC Sampo, and then from here, then you just click on the home.
I don't have that under my base. I can add a new base. Is there some way for me to add TEC sample base
Okay,
to my
I'll
base?
send you, you know what, maybe you're not in, I thought you were in here. I thought for sure you were in here, but I'll send you, after the meeting, I'll send you an invite. Or actually, while Bear's talking, I'll do it. And actually, I might as well just do it right now. People can see exactly how this works. So there's invite links. Just copy the invite link, and then I'm going to put it in. I'm just going to put it in the text channel here. And so if you're not in the sample base, just use this invite. I think most people are in it, but if you're not, use this invitation, and then it will add you. You'll be in the base, and then you'll be able to see all this stuff.
Okay, I got it now. Would it
Okay.
be possible to add that invite to the Google Calendar invite for TEC Sample? Because that's where we usually keep our agendas.
Yeah,
Does it
sure.
expire, or is there a limit to number of people that can use that?
No, there's not. We're getting this for free right now, but I'm in conversations with the folks at Clarity about like longer term what the cost is going to be. So, but yeah, let's do that. So I'm just going to make a note to do that, and then
No, I can just do it right now too.
okay, thank you.
And the doc that Bear was referencing isn't linked there yet, but it will be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's linked there. I just linked it there in the updates. If you click on the Sampo organizer role, there should be a link there.
Okay, thanks, Bear.
Yeah.
Right there. Okay. So let's keep going. Do you want to just sorry everybody. No, I shouldn't apologize for this. This is super important actually that we're gonna like right now as we're ramping up, we're gonna spend a little bit of time each week just talking about the kind of organization, how we're organizing ourselves, and not too much time each time, but I want to just keep doing this because a big part of our success is going to be our ability to scale and to bring people in and to like help manage all these projects because we've got a lot. So, Barry, do you just want to touch briefly on I don't think it's worth going into the plan, but just talk a little bit about what you're doing with this sample organizational plan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think that one is probably one of the most important documents that we will have in Sampo, because basically it will talk about how we work, how we operate, like the structure that the group has. So I think it might take some time to actually finish it. But for now, something that I could say is that these will include some of these different sections, like for example, the working group structure. Like how is it structured? What different groups or subgroups or teams, or we would like to call them circles as well, we have inside the Sampo working group. Like for example, you can see they're like analysts, builders, fund managers, and like the definition for each of them. What do they do? And just get into more detail into that. Also, like the different processes that the group will have, what's actually happening right now, with Clarity. What are the processes to work in Clarity? What are the processes for Discord and the threads that we have? Or how do we organize ourselves in SendHub or with the payments? So it's all of these different parts of how we organize ourselves and how we work together that it's going to be included. What else? Also roles, defining roles. What I was just talking about before, we've been having also this discussion about roles and permissions within Clarity, that it's kind of like a different thing from the actual roles from the Sampo working group. So, like making the differentiation between those really clear and really understandable for everyone to see. That's gonna be on this document. The different types of contributions that this has been talked about, like we have salaries, we have bounties, we have volunteer contributions. So how are they gonna be different? How are we gonna work with them separately? And lastly, also, I think it's important to include there a glossary with different terminology of the words that we will be using in the working group. Even from the beginning of what does an actual goal mean within this context, or an objective, or a task, or a project. Like sometimes people can have different understandings of that. So just having that clear, and I think that's gonna save us a lot of confusion. So far, those are the sections that the document will include. Probably we will add more in the future. I think, again, this is just starting, and I think it might take some time to finish. But yeah, I hopefully I made myself clear on what's the purpose and what's the idea behind this document. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free.
Yeah, that seems super clear. I actually have a question about the previous document. Just in the accounting section, there was tracking working group spending in the Sampo budget sheet, and it just made me wonder about the relationship between Sampo and transparency working group in that respect. So yeah, curious if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the relationship is that all of that work around the accounting and the accounting tracking, all that stuff, that's all transparency. That rolls up into the audit. Our role is more like an internal customer to transparency. So we are making requests of for certain things, and there's a lot of overlap in these groups. So Rex is here and Bear is here, and both have played a pretty instrumental role. I mean, Rex built that, and Bear was like involved at the very beginning of that in terms of shaping and stuff like that. So, but it's definitely something that belongs in transparency.
And just to add on into that, also, like, what I mean that in that section of accounting that you saw is there's actually these budget sheets that transparency actually created, and that they are being shared across the different working groups, that they just serve to like track all the different movements and transactions that the working group is having. So Sampo will have one, or we already have one, and that was just like kind of like clarifying that task, like just like putting on the information in that specific sheet that we will have for Sampo.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that there's more specific questions I could ask, but I'll just leave it at that. I'm just curious of the relationship between transparency and Sampo. It seems like there's a good dynamic there, and hearing that some of the core people from transparency are involved makes me feel, like that's going to be taken care of. So thanks, guys.
Okay, so let's just, we were going to give a quick overview of the roles, the way that that the Clarity base is structured. Let's just, NT and Bear, can you guys let's just do this very quickly, because Tam's going to give us an update on the token engineering consulting intake service. Now, plenty of time for that. So why don't can we cap the roles thing to like just 5 minutes or less?
Sure, yeah. Do you want to take it, NT?
Okay, yeah, sure. So we are looking into probably so we have this question as to how to organize the Clarity base, which is probably one of the I'd say one of the most important aspects of this working group, because this is where a lot of the action happens. And so we are thinking about having a sort of hybrid mode, hybrid setting between some, say, fundamental roles and then some moderate ones. So, for example, we'll have a newcomer role, which will be pretty much the most basic permissionless role. Anyone can get the role, and it gives you access to view, comment, and stuff like that. Then we have the contributor role, which is where you have a bit more of access to create documents and move things around. We're still looking into how, like, what are probably like the requirements for you to have the contributor role. Because Clarity, for example, doesn't have like an edit history like Google Docs, so it's a bit tricky. We want everyone with edit access to sort of agree on some practices so we can keep everything tidy on the base. And then we are thinking about having two more roles, which would be the organizer role for, let's say, this is a more management role where there's a lot of where there's some permissions around settings of the base itself. And then finally, an admin, which has the ability to grant roles and remove them. Those are the fundamentals, but then around them, we can have roles about, say, who's got access to process payments on the tasks, who's got access to, say, manage groups, which would probably be the people leading each group within Sampo. And I think there was another one, which was I think was it that. 1 second, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was that. Yeah. So there's not really much to it. It's I'd say it's pretty basic, but I don't know if there's any. And there's a lot of things that we have yet to look into. But I don't know if there's any comments so far or questions.
Thanks, Santi. Yeah, basically the what we're trying to do is keep this as permissionless as possible, so people can come in and plug in and do work, but then also set it up so that we're able to make sure that the people who are working on the projects have been vetted and actually kind of like prove themselves before we give them access to like the most sensitive stuff. So it's permissionless entry, and then kind of prove your way in to get greater and greater responsibility. Any questions before we go on to the next section? Comments? Okay. Tam, would you like to give an update on what's happening with the Token Engineering Consulting Intake Service? Working title?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So this is something that's been, I would say, fomenting for a little while now around what should this be? What can it look like? And we started a little scoping of it in one of the earlier Sampo calls. Jeff Emmett volunteered to also to sort of help shape this as a service. I've had conversations with Mike DeMello from LTF and Zargum from Block Science around their own intake services, and Jeff is also doing intake for Block Science. It's probably one of his primary roles there. So there's just some more around like how are these consulting firms doing intake now, and then I'm going to share. Okay, so I don't know how much of this information has been passed on, so I'm probably going to explain more, and people might already be aware of it. But I'll basically start from the beginning. So the idea is to have a way for projects that are seeking token engineers to have a way to post their request, so their service demand. Something like, you can imagine it's like a job board, but instead of a job board for positions, it is token engineering demands, token engineering service demands. That analogy breaks down, but it serves the purpose for starting this this discussion. So the idea would be that we would have a alliance of consulting firms plus the Token Engineering Academy. And this alliance would be the heart of this token engineering service board, for lack of a better name right now. There's a short list of people or firms that we would want as part of this alliance. And I'll sort of describe a little bit how it works. I can share a really poor drawing of just sort of initial thoughts. Here, I'll share my screen now. Okay. So if we can imagine that there's some board, we don't really have exactly what it would look like. It might be a place on the forum. It might be token log. There are many different possibilities for where this this board would be. There would be an intake form, and the token engineer, the project that's seeking token engineering would fill out this form. And this form, in order to fill out the form, they would have to stake some amount of tokens. The final figure would be worked out, some amount of tokens, which would equate to the exit and entry tribute being a fee that would be commensurate with a job board posting. The idea, like following that analogy a little bit. This service demand would then, if the project was willing to make it public, so there's sort of this like, okay, maybe there's some proprietary information that this project has that they're willing to share with the TEC and the Alliance, but they're not willing to make public. There would be a private repo for just demands that are proprietary, that have proprietary information that they don't want to share. And then there would be a public forum for demands that are that they're willing, that the demander is willing to allow the public to comment on, actually, and make suggestions and sort of give feedback on. Then these demands would sort of accumulate, and there would be a probably monthly review from the Alliance, who would essentially provide feedback for these demands. So one of the things that come up a lot in intake for token engineering firms is that they realize that there's already a GitHub repository that has a tool that does exactly that thing. So something like, oh, maybe you don't need to recreate this. Have you looked at this software library that does that same exact function already? So the Alliance would be able to provide that kind of very deeply knowledgeable feedback. Would be able to then take projects that they were interested in doing to the next step, which would be scoping what that project actually is. So really requirements defining, defining the requirements, the functional requirements of it, and then maybe even the technical requirements if they decide to take it on as a project. And so if they decide to take on the project, then there would be a more like a scoping intake call, right? So this is the first layer. This is like when we get all of these requests on our channels or in our DMs. They're like, hey, this project is launching and they need a token engineer. The way this would work is that people would just be able to send these requests to Token Engineering Commons. So Token Engineering, like one of the benefits is Token Engineering Commons would become the place that that everyone sends token engineers, right? Like token engineering projects looking for token engineers. So that's one of the benefits, immediate benefits for TEC. Of course, the second benefit is for the projects that are serious enough to acquire tokens to then stake these tokens to submit a form, would be some sort of revenue through the exit and entry tributes. And then there's a special case for TE, Token Engineering Academy, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in the first iteration of this, started out with just this alliance, and then in conversations with Angela, it grew into be something more, but complementary. For token engineering firms, this first step of just, answering these questions for this very first, like, I need a token engineer. Okay, well, what are you looking to do? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What kind of service are you looking for? There's a real workload. So it would allow those organizations, those firms in the alliance to sort of offload that to Token Engineering Commons, and we would take care of creating the forms that create discrete structures for each of the services. So we could, discretely describe different services in token engineering. And also maybe even, and this is something that Jeff added in the last call, maybe even bring in some, some of these, like, ability to have these projects decide whether they want to learn their own, ecosystem value flow, stakeholder mapping, stock and flow. So lead some projects through this educational path, and or lead them directly to a firm who would want to take their work, and or this forum would be public. So in theory, token engineers could come and contact these projects directly if they wanted to work for them. Okay, and then so Token Engineering Academy is a special case. Token Engineering Academy is hoping to build a revenue model around matchmaking services for their graduates. So you complete TE fundamentals, and then there's, job fairs, like live events, but also some way to do a matchmaking between a token engineer and a project. It actually plugs in really nicely to this original model where, the alliance, the firms in the alliance maybe, would either stake tokens with the TEC and or pay a fee once they take on one of these projects. But the way that TE would work is the TEAs are actually suppliers. So they're more like a recruiting agency. They're more like an agency that headhunts, that finds talent for these projects. So the referral fees are just a lot higher in that case, right? Certainly 4 figures, maybe 5, like low 5 figures in some cases, especially for token engineers. And that referral fee would actually go to Token Engineering Academy, with some portion of it going to the Token Engineering Commons, to this service board organization or service. So there's a short list of organizations that we think we could make good, good piloting, like a good pilot test for the alliance. Of course, it would be TEC, Block Science, Longtail Financial, Token Engineering Academy, maybe something like Token Economics DAO. There's a few other recommendations that were mentioned that possibly could also make a good pilot for this kind of service if we were to start piloting it. And then, there's certain things like the MVP, right? So like this first version of it would be very, very simple. The intake form would be very simple. We're not going to try to define token engineering services before we launch it. We would actually launch and then use each review session iteratively to inform the discrete sections of token engineering, specifically the pieces of work that each of these firms can do. So almost catering this to our alliance. And it would incrementally just get better over time. And then there's also this idea of, like, as far as I know, there does not exist any full mapping of all token engineering services. So this would be something of like a public good for token engineering as an industry. Like, what does that look like? And then what else? Okay, and then benefits to the TEC. Of course, it's, clients staking TEC. The idea of the reputation. So I had somebody send me a nice message already. It was like, somebody's like, hey, Tam, Zargam and Jeff told me that Token Engineering is building this thing for token engineering services. I need a token engineer. What have you guys got? And I was like, oh my God, okay, we're just give us a few more weeks. We're going to launch something. So it's sort of like just this idea that the organizations in our alliance and ourselves would have a place to send people who are looking for token engineering. And while I think the first iteration of this service is not going to be mind-blowing, I think we will get to the point where it is an extraordinarily useful and productive service, not just for the organizations in our alliance, of course, but for us too, and for token engineering. And then what else do I have here? Aligns with your mission. Yeah, so it aligns really nicely with our mission of advancing token engineering. We're doing a mapping of token services. We are, we can be very, what was the word I wanted? We can choose projects with discretion, projects that are value aligned, and certainly choose organizations in the alliance that are value aligned. And then the benefit for the alliance firms is basically it's like they get to offload this first really pain in the butt step to an organization that's going to really take care of doing that well for all of the organizations, and then feedback into how this process works and how we develop this. It's called a form, but really the form is just a mapping of token engineering services and building that as a product for, and not a product, but a service for TEC. So we started with that, and then we came up with some really like soft questions for the form that we need to do a little bit more digging into that. So far was like Jeff, Gideon, and myself. The next step would be, I threw them in here, organizing them, putting them into categories, bringing them to Longtail Financial, to Black Science, to TEA. Getting some more feedback from the consulting firms themselves. And then there's this thing that Gideon shared just today, which was very great. I guess Aragon launched the service to connect with DAOs to help DAOs build your way. So there's a little bit inspiration in here. What I see here is basically you could find an expert to help with your DAO or become an expert. So for Find an Expert, they basically list a bunch of organizations. And when you click on it, you basically just go to their Discord server. So it's super, like, I appreciate that they launched it in this like MVP version, because it's like I said, it's not going to blow you away, but it's like they're taking the steps in the right direction to get there. So I'd say this is very similar to what I'm imagining for us at TEC as well. So it's just, so that's just if you're looking for help with becoming a DAO, but imagine for our case, it's bigger, wider, right? More token engineering. And then for this Become an Expert, this is, I guess, how you can apply to become one of these. Something very interesting for TEC to do as well, but also for us to consider how this is also what Gideon sent, how they classify these different services of what you're looking for. And it's just this one. What kind?
We've just got 2 more minutes, so I just what should we do? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what if people have feedback given the time constraints? Should they just put it in the Sampo channel, or like questions and things like that? What do you think is most useful?
Yeah, I'm assuming there's lots of questions. Maybe do we want to just open up for questions? And I also, we need help. We really need a project manager on this. Gideon, myself, Jeff, all extremely limited time. And I feel like we're pushing this along in like the hour, like this, where I would be sleeping. So we really are desperate for a project manager to move this along. So I'd say the first thing is like anyone interested in helping project manage this would be amazing. And then, yeah, if you have questions, and then maybe we talk now, I can go a few minutes over, or Sampo is a good place too.
Yeah, maybe just to respect people's time, because we're coming up at the end of the hour. We can also, why don't we do this? If people have questions, they can put it in the Sampo channel, and then let's reserve some time for next week. This is our first service, and so this is like the most important thing we've got going on right now. I mean, there are other initiatives, but let's leave some time for next week, and we can talk about this in more detail. Does that work for you, Tam? I know this is 10 o'clock your time, so I don't want to volunteer for that. But let's start with this. Let's start with, if you have questions, comments, put them in the channel, and we'll assess for next week. How about that? Okay. Thank you. That's great. Rex, we did not get to the accounting thing, but we'll add that for next week. It's really cool for people who haven't seen it. It's really cool. These
Yeah,
these worksheets.
sounds good. We'll have more working groups, and like it'll be more polished off next week when we show it. So it's all good.
Cool. All right. Hey, thank you everyone for joining today. It's great to have you all here, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Gideon.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Super
Thanks,
excited.
everyone.
Yeah.